The Adeptus Terra, also known as the Priesthood of Earth, is the overarching central bureaucratic governmental organization of the Imperium of Man. It comprises numerous autonomous departments that receive orders from the High Lords of Terra. Serving the Master of Mankind, the Priesthood of Earth is often referred to as the Emperor's right hand. The Adeptus Terra must interpret his will and serve the Imperium. Throughout the Imperium, there are only a few organizations that do not fall under this central governance, the most notable being the Inquisition, Adeptus Mechanicus and Adeptus Ministorum. The Adeptus Astartes is officially part of the Adeptus Terra, but maintains a high level of autonomy. But before we proceed to a superficial examination of the numerous Adeptus, it is necessary to begin the narrative from the very top of the Imperium structure. At the pinnacle of power in the Imperium of Mankind is the Immortal Emperor. He is the most powerful psyker in human history, supposedly born in the region of ancient Anatolia in the 8th millennium BCE. Around the 25th millennium, the age of technology, during which humanity spread across the galaxy due to a high level of technology, transitioned into the age of strife. The fourth Chaos God, the insatiable Slanesh, was born, and the long night commenced, flooding the cosmic space with vast warp storms. Humanity desperately clung to life to survive as a species. Some human colonies in the galaxy perished, others significantly deteriorated, and some even transformed both in body and soul. In the 30th millennium, when the warp storms abated, the Emperor decided to act. No one will ever fully understand his superintelligence, motives, actions, or decisions. But it can be said with certainty that the fate of the galaxy would never be the same. He succeeded in uniting the warlike techno-barbarians of Terra, incorporating the tech priesthood of Mars into the burgeoning Imperium and conquering the galaxy with words and sword. None of this would have happened without the genetically modified soldiers and their commanders, the Legiones Astartes and their 20 Primarchs. The Chaos Gods sowed the seeds of betrayal among the Primarchs, igniting the first civil war in the young Imperium. The Emperor decided to sacrifice his immortal life at the end of the Horus Heresy for the preservation of humanity. Mortally wounded after a titanic duel with the leader of the rebellion, he ascended to the Golden Throne, a mysterious device from the dark age of technology. The Golden Throne is connected to a massive psychic beacon known as the Astronomicon, which aids Imperial spacecraft in navigating the warp. Thus, immobile and sustained only by cybernetic mechanisms, he watches over his people. His body is desiccated, but his spirit continues to uphold the strategically vital psychic beacon. To support their lord, it was decided to continue the temporary sacrifice of psychers. Henceforth, every day 10,000 chosen souls surrender their life and psychic powers to sustain the Astronomicon and the Emperor. Soon, for countless trillions of people, he became nothing less than a god. Thanks to him, the Imperium Unified remains one of the most powerful, dominant intelligent species in the Milky Way galaxy. Rumor has it that he continuously battles with the gods of chaos in the warp and prevents their further invasion into the material universe. The Golden Throne itself, with the Lord of Humanity, resides in the Sanctum Imperialis, in a vast hall in the heart of the Imperial Palace, under the relentless protection of the Adeptus Custodes. Next in the hierarchy of the Imperium's governance are the High Lords of Terra, forming the Council of Terra, known as the Senatorum Imperialis. The Senatorum is the imperial governing body made up of 12 representatives of the most powerful Adeptus of the Imperium. This body carries out the everyday decisions necessary for managing the Imperium according to what they deem the divine will of the Emperor. Since the Emperor can no longer manage his empire directly, the High Lords claim that his will is known to them, and thus the Emperor rules through them. Although the Imperium is too vast to be effectively governed centrally, the Senatorum ultimately makes decisions affecting the lives of trillions of imperial subjects throughout the galaxy. Occasionally, in different periods of the Imperium's age, The Senatorum Imperialis was led by a leader who was the first among equals. He was bestowed with the titles Lord Commander of the Imperium and Imperial Regent. The current holder of these titles, and therefore the de facto ruler of the Imperium, is the resurrected Primarch Guilliman. Although sources regarding the exact composition of the Senatorum Imperialis vary, some institutions and organizations in the Imperium are so powerful that their leaders can be considered High Lords on a permanent basis. The following 9 representatives of their Adeptus are virtually always represented in the Council of Terra. The Master of the Adeptus Administratum, the representative of the Inquisition, the Ecclesiarch of the Adeptus Ministorum, the General Fabricator of the Adeptus Mechanicus, the Grand Provost Marshal of the Adeptus Arbites, the Pater Nover of Navigators, the Master of the Astronomicon, the Master of the Adeptus Astra Telepathica, and the Grand Master of the Officio Assassinorum. The remaining 3 seats in the Council of Terra are filled from among the representatives of other Adeptus. The next level in the power hierarchy is the largest and most important Adeptus, divided into many others to delegate specific responsibilities in management. These are the 5 departments of the Adeptus Terra: Adeptus Administratum, Adeptus Arbites, Adeptus Astra Telepathica, Adeptus Astronomicon, Adeptus Custodes, and 3 organizations independent of the Adeptus Terra, comparable in status to the Adeptus Mechanicus, Adeptus Ministorum, and the Holy Ordos of the Imperial Inquisition. Here, it is necessary to make an exception to the general course of the narrative and highlight an icon of the universe. Their direct involvement in the formation of the Imperium has left a significant mark on the established structure of the largest human realm. Space Marines, or Adeptus Astartes, stand as the foremost defenders of humanity, the greatest warriors of the Emperor. Technically, they are not human, but the next step in the artificial genetic evolution of superhumans. Owing to rigorous genetic modifications, psychological processing, and stringent training, they surpass ordinary humans many times over in every regard. Space Marines are immune to diseases and can sustain wounds that would be life-threatening to ordinary mortals continuing to fight on. Clad in power armor and wielding the most potent weaponry known to humanity, the fearless Astartes are angels of death on the battlefield. The history of the Imperium is deeply intertwined with the legions of Astartes and their primarchs. Unfortunately, those who, alongside the Emperor, founded the Imperium also became its destroyers. Corrupted by the gods of chaos, traitors sparked a civil war that led to the Emperor's grievous injury. Since those legendary times, the Master of Mankind has observed his subjects from the height of the Golden Throne. After the devastating Horus Heresy, the foundations of the modern Imperium were laid in a period known as the Reformation. The first High Lords of Terra, under the guidance of the Primarch of the Ultramarines, Guilliman, established the Adeptus Terra, a structure of the Imperium's functioning with feudal duties for planetary governors. One of the most significant achievements of the Reformation was the reorganization of the Imperium's armed forces. This was undertaken almost single-handedly by Guilliman, appointed as the Lord Commander of the Imperium. With his characteristic speed and efficiency, he reformed the structure of the Imperial Auxilia into the Astra Militarum, and the Armada Imperialis into the Imperial Navy. Substantial changes affected the legions of the Astartes as well. The Ultramarine Primarch took measures to ensure that a disaster on the scale of the Horus Heresy would never be repeated. He embodied his wisdom in the monumental tome Codex Astartes. This text became a pivotal part of his legacy and the cornerstone upon which the Imperium's future would be built. Of particular interest are the chapters that delve into tactical assignments, technical specifications of equipment, uniforms, command protocols, and the countless other aspects of the Space Marine doctrines. Despite the wide range of topics, the most important and controversial decree of the Primarch's great work was that the existing Space Marine legions would be disbanded and reorganized into smaller formations. Many of his brother Primarchs initially protested Guilliman's decree, but almost all eventually agreed on the necessity of reorganization to ensure the safety of the Imperium. Thus was born the structure of the Adeptus Astartes chapters, following a fateful decision during the event woven into the annals of the Imperium as the Second Founding, when military legions were divided into individual Astartes chapters. In addition to their own name and heraldry, each of these new chapters chose for themselves a homeworld or fortress monastery, thus dispersing across the known imperial space to protect humanity from all possible threats from every direction. The Codex Astartes indicated that each chapter should consist of 1,000 battle brothers and be responsible for its own recruitment, training and equipping. Never again would one person be able to command the fearsome power of an entire legion of space marines. The Horus heresy also revealed the inherent flaws in the gene seed of superhumans. These were exacerbated by the accelerated methods of growing progenoids necessary to maintain the personnel of the massive legions. Guilliman believed that the forces of chaos could exploit the physical and mental degradation that resulted. To set Horus's troops against the Emperor, one of the key tasks of the Codex Astartes was to recognize and eliminate these genetic flaws. As a result, the Codex decreed that Space Marines henceforth would be created and trained slowly. Gene banks used to create Astartes implants would be meticulously checked for any defects. Grown organs would be subjected to the most stringent tests for genetic purity. In addition to medical indications, young candidates were now required to pass an additional suitability check before being accepted into the ranks of the Angels of Death. Rigorous training highlighted moral qualities and personality traits, often prevailing over physical attributes. As a final precaution, Guilliman entrusted the Adeptus Terra to create and maintain working gene banks on Terra for the production and storage of tithe portions of Space Marine gene seed. These banks would be required to provide gene seed for subsequent foundings of Astartes chapters. To prevent cross-contamination, the genetic fund of each legion was isolated, while the genetic fund of the traitor legions was placed under timeless isolation. However, at the time, many believed they were simply destroyed. By taking direct control of these genetic resources, the Adeptus Terra ultimately managed to control the Space Marines. Only the High Lords of Terra possessed the authority to destroy or create Space Marine armies at their discretion. It is worth noting that the Codex Astartes dictated Guilliman's vision of the role of Space Marines within the structure of the Imperium, serving humanity but not ruling over it. Therefore, in 10,000 years, only in the most desperate times did representatives of the Astartes take a seat in the Senatorum Imperialis. Most chapters strictly adhere to the organization established by the Codex Astartes to carry out tactical functions and organizational processes. Others, such as the Blood Angels, Black Templars, and Dark Angels, are organized according to the general doctrines of the Codex, but possess forces, tactics, and unique traditions that set them apart from their brethren. However, there are orders that fundamentally differ from the Codex and owe nothing to it. The most renowned among them are the Space Wolves. The sons of Leman Russ never adhered to the Codex Astartes. Their resolute Primarch reorganized his order according to his own views. Due to wide autonomy and formal reporting to the Adeptus Terra, there are disagreements between some orders, the Inquisition, and the Adeptus Ministorum, sometimes escalating into armed conflict. Now, let us begin our introduction with the largest and most intricate department, responsible for virtually every sphere of life in the Imperium. The Adeptus Administratum was initially created by the Emperor as the Imperial Administration. This was the first unified galactic bureaucratic apparatus of the nascent Imperium of mankind, organized after the triumph at Ulanor. The Imperial Administration was placed under the control of the Regent of Terra, Malcador. Being the largest part of the burgeoning Adeptus Terra, the clerks of the Imperial Administration were to bear responsibility for the tithe collection resource allocation, and essentially all administrative functions necessary for the governance of the Imperium. By the 42nd millennium, the sprawling and ever-changing countless departments handle virtually every aspect of humanity's life in imperial space. The greatest concentration of adept presence is observed on worlds with especially high military presence, high tithe demands, or large-scale trade. In particular, within the vast offices of the Administratum on developed worlds work hundreds of thousands of archivists, ordinaries and prefects, closely monitoring operations at the sector level with a keen eye and unwavering dedication to their duty. Of all the departments of Adeptus Terra, the Administratum is considered the most prestigious, yet its high-ranking members, ironically, count among the most influential people in the galaxy. If the Adeptus Terra is the mechanism that drives the Imperium, then the Administratum is the oil that ensures its operation. Without the Administratum, the machine would stall and the Imperium would collapse. As a result, the Master of the Administratum is, in effect, the most politically influential member of the High Lords of Terra. Many positions within the Administratum are considered hereditary. Typical adepts of the Administratum toil in vast repositories, seated behind mountains of documents and workstations. By imperial standards, they can be considered quite educated, and like other non-combatant servants of Adeptus Terra, members of the Administratum wear robes, with the colour of their attire varying depending on their rank within the Adeptus and their area of responsibility. The primary colour worn by the lowest scribes is black. Members of higher rank don progressively lighter shades of grey and ultimately pure white. Astra Militarum guardsmen often say that for every soldier there is a dozen scribes and at least 2 minor adepts recording a multitude of annotations that no one will ever use. Most of the subdivisions within the Administratum are small and insignificant, but initially we shall discuss the most well-known, significant and noteworthy departments within the Adeptus Administratum. The Imperial Fleet is the term given to the totality of all warships of the Imperium capable of faster-than-light travel, directly controlled by the Adeptus Terra. It is divided into 3 separate branches: the military fleet, the merchant fleet, and the civilian fleet. The navigator houses are also officially considered subordinate to the Imperial fleet, though their actual political power and immense wealth provide them influence among other Adeptus. In the convoluted bureaucratic system of the Imperium, it is believed that various components of the Imperial fleet are formally under the command of the Adeptus Administratum, especially those vessels not directly belonging to the Imperial fleet. The 3 divisions of the Imperial fleet, both civilian and military, are administratively divided among the 5 segments constituting Imperial space. Each of their command headquarters is situated in a vast orbital fortress segmentum. The Tempestus segmentum fortress is located above the mining world of Baca. For segmentum obscurus, it is the forge world of Cypromundi. The forge world of Hydrafa is the anchor for the segmentum fortress of the battle fleet Pacificus. The Great Iron Ring of Mars serves as a base for the battle fleet segmentum Solar. The imperial world of Cardunia Center is the focal point of the extensive segmentum Ultima. It is worth noting that, according to edicts ratified during the Reformation, a segmentum fortress is directly controlled by a high-ranking Adeptus Administratum official known as the Master of the Segmentum, who answers only to the Master of the Administratum, one of many security and control measures over the military forces of the Imperium. Each segmentum has its own trade, civilian and battle fleets of the Imperial fleet. For example, the Navis Imperialis Solar is the collective total of all military vessels of the Imperial fleet assigned to segmentum Solar, while the trade fleet Pacificus is the collective total of all void ships in the trade fleet of segmentum Pacificus, and so on. The Imperial fleet rarely, if ever, assembles the entire battle fleet of a segmentum because, given the possibility of an enemy emerging from any direction, the military ships within a segmentum are divided into battle fleets operating at the sector level. It is important to highlight immediately that outside the bureaucratic structure of the Imperial fleet, there are enough Adeptus possessing their own void ships. Adeptus Astartes, Adeptus Arbites, the black ships of the Adeptus Astra Telepathica, and the Adeptus Ministorum, rogue traders, fall under their ranks. The Inquisition also possesses a small number of void ships, though they may requisition any vessel for their needs. Separately stand the ships of the Adeptus Mechanicus. Their void fleet is officially called the Basilicon Astra. The Mechanicus maintains this fleet independently of the larger Imperial fleet. This is part of the cost of the mutually beneficial coexistence of Mars and Terra, as is the fact that they build and maintain all military and civilian ships of the Imperium on their forge worlds and orbital shipyards throughout the galaxy. The fleet of the Adeptus Mechanicus consists not only of classes of ships found in the Imperial fleet, but also of more unique vessels, such as the legendary Arc Mechanicus, which is both a ship and a mobile factory, producing numerous, sometimes unique products. The Navis Imperialis, known in Low Gothic as the Imperial Battle Fleet, is one of the primary armed forces of the Imperium of Man, while the Astra Militarum represents the ground forces of the Imperium. The Navis Imperialis is responsible for the void ship fleets that maintain order among the stars and planets of the Imperium. They are also responsible for all space and air support provided to the Imperial Guard through their Aeronautica Imperialis division, as well as the transportation of these guardsmen to countless battle zones throughout the Imperium. During the Great Crusade and the Horus Heresy, the Navis Imperialis was not an independent armed force, but was considered part of the Armada Imperialis. During the Reformation following the Civil War, Primarch Guilliman divided the Armada Imperialis into many interdependent subdivisions. This was done to weaken the Imperial armed forces in the case of disobedience. Every starship of the Imperial fleet is assigned to one of the Segmentum Majoris and is under the command of the corresponding High Lord Admiral. He commands all the ships in the Imperial space entrusted to him, although all 5 High Lords Admirals hold the same ranks. The command of the Segmentum Solar is considered the oldest and therefore the most prestigious and dominant position. It is not uncommon for one of these 5 powerful individuals to sit on the Senatorum Imperialis as the ruling High Lord of Terra. Each segment is divided into sectors, areas and spaces, often cubic in shape and occupying an area of 8 million light-years. They contain many subsectors, clusters of star systems with a radius of no more than 20 light-years. The starships of the Imperial fleet of each segmentum are divided among the sectors into additional groups called battle fleets. These subdivisions are tasked with defending the sector to which they are assigned. They are named after the sector they protect. The Gothic battle fleet is stationed in the Gothic sector. The Calixis battle fleet is located in the Calixis sector. The battle fleet Cardia is located in the Cadian sector, and so forth. It is commanded by officers of the rank of Lord Admiral. Subsectors usually include between 2 to 8 star systems within a radius of 10 light-years. However, this is not a constant. Some may encompass more systems, while others fewer. It all depends on the convenience of patrolling by the Imperial Navy. Since subsectors are astrographic divisions of worlds, not volumes of space, there exists a vast number of star systems in each sector that do not belong to any subsector. Formally, they are called intersectors and are more commonly known as wild zones, forbidden zones, void space, wild space, frontier space, and so forth. Intersectors may contain gas and dust nebulae, inaccessible areas, star systems controlled by Xenos, uncharted, uninhabited, or uninhabitable worlds. Each sector battle fleet is allotted a certain number of cruisers and battleships, usually between 50 to 75 ships. It is also assigned several squadrons of escort starships and practically incalculable quantities of transports, messenger ships, orbital defense systems, space platforms, and system patrol ships. The ships of the sector battle fleet must constantly patrol their sector and perform various tasks, whether it be protecting trade vessels from pirates, transporting Astra Militarum regiments to war zones, escorting Adeptus Mechanicus explorer fleets and the like. Due to the enormous volume of space requiring security, the sector battle fleet is divided into battle groups, consisting of 1 or 2 cruisers accompanied by a squadron of escort vessels. If a particular situation is beyond the capability of a single battle group, additional detachments of battle groups are called for reinforcement, and occasionally an entire battle fleet may be formed to operate in a smaller territory than a whole sector. The Armageddon Line fleet is exclusively assigned to the Armageddon subsector, and prior to the Third War of the same name comprised 4 battleships, 27 cruisers, and 36 escort squadrons. Or the Solar Battle Fleet is specifically designated for the solar system, and is primarily responsible for the protection of the 2 sacred worlds, Terra and Mars, located at the heart of the Imperium. The number of void ships responsible for its protection is strictly classified, but any observer would note the substantial number of ubiquitous patrols. Under the purview of the Navis Imperialis is not only the Aeronautica Imperialis, but also Navy Intelligence. The Naval Military Intelligence is a division that functions as a reconnaissance and strategic analysis department, including the collection and analysis of data on humans and Xenos. The department's operatives, in the performance of their duties, are guided by their mission for the benefit of the Imperium, thereby often clashing with ambitious careerists amidst ongoing wars. For example, during the Sabbath Worlds Crusade, operatives from Navy Intelligence uncovered a conspiracy by Lord General Militant Hector Draver. His scheme, aimed at advancing his career within the higher command of the Crusade, envisioned that he would ultimately be appointed the new War Master in place of Makaroth. The Naval Military Intelligence put an end to this conspiracy by deploying primary and secondary operatives acting on their own initiative. They curtailed the expansion of a web of intrigue by taking measures to eliminate pawns from Draver. The merchant fleet of the Imperium of Man is the commercial component of the Imperial Navy. Each of the merchant fleets, like the combat fleets, is based in one of the 5 segmentum majoris. The main office of the merchant fleet, with a speaker of the Chartist captains representing their interests in the Senatorum Imperialis, is located in the fortress of Nexus Oxiomatic on Terra. There are hidden the mythical magisters of Calcula Horarium, genetically and cybernetically modified individuals who are essential members of the merchant fleet. Many of them are so severely deformed, mutated, or genetically altered that they exist only with the aid of life support vats. Their duty is to perform monumental calculations necessary for coordinating shipping across the entire Imperium. To legally conduct trade, a merchant vessel must obtain an imperial trade charter from the Adeptus Administratum, allowing it to join the merchant fleet and segmentum. Not all charters offer captains the same conditions. Some offer more authority and more trading concessions to particularly privileged captains, although all of them are feudal contracts requiring the merchant captain to swear an oath to obey the authorities of the Imperial Navy in the segmentum. A merchant fleet captain cannot register their vessel in the Imperium or gain legal operating rights granted by a trade charter until they take this oath before the fleet authorities of their segmentum, and the document number is entered into the records of the segmentum fortress. It should be noted that Chartist captains are not the same as rogue traders, who are far more politically influential and independent individuals. The merchant fleet is one of the oldest organizations in the human-settled galaxy, having emerged even before the birth of the Imperium, its roots going back to the age of technology when trade charters were first issued as part of humanity's initial expansion across the galaxy. Unlike most imperial organizations, which exist solely to maintain the Emperor's dominion over his realms, the merchant fleets engage solely in commerce. As a result, their captains have become extraordinarily wealthy. In the era Indomitus, the combined merchant fleets of the 5 segmentum majoris account for nearly 90% of all warp-capable void ships in the Imperium. The most powerful charter captains, at certain periods of Imperial history, acquired enough political power to occupy a place in the Senatorum Imperialis. The position they held is called the Speaker of the Charter Captains. In addition to representing the members of their Adeptus, they lead the Presidium Mercatura, the security forces of Nexus Axiomatica. The formation of this protective corps dates back to the Siege of Terra, when Nexus Axiomatica and all its precious records of imperial trade and the tithe were nearly destroyed before Horus's forces were defeated, to ensure that such a threat to the economy of the Imperium would never occur again, and its own protection was formed. The Presidium Mercatura is a lightly armed force dressed in dark blue uniforms, whose primary task is personal protection and internal security. The Mercatura infantry does not wear any personal armour or wears light armour and is typically armed with lasguns and las pistols. They also use combat ships and artillery servitors to provide powerful fire support when necessary. The civilian fleet includes all private civilian void ships of the Imperium of mankind, which have been granted the right to operate on commercial or passenger routes determined by imperial authorities. In the Imperium, there are several thousand civilian void ships owned and registered to private individuals, minor traders known as free traders, noble families, corporations, and commercial cartels. All of them must operate only on warp routes licensed and approved by the authorities of the Imperial Navy. They are usually Adeptus administratum bureaucrats responsible for regulating all transportation within a given segment of the Imperium. Licenses for routes must be purchased and renewed approximately every 100 standard years. Civilian fleets claim route licenses only as they become available from the Imperial Navy. Moreover, the route is awarded to the fleet willing to pay the most for it. This system allows the Imperium to maintain interstellar transportation for any reason considered inconvenient to maintain using the civilian fleet. In addition to providing route licenses, the Administratum also issues individual licenses valid only for one-time interstellar travel. The Navis Nobilitae is an ancient organization of mutants from the Terran nobility which originated several thousand standard years before the creation of the imperial humanity. It consists of noble families who are psychers with a unique mutation, a third eye. With it, they can not only look into the warp, but also see within it the powerful light beam of the Astronomicon. It was only thanks to this organization that the Emperor's Great Crusade across the galaxy became possible. To this day, they remain a vital Adeptus, linking the Imperium into a cohesive whole. Members of the Navis Nobilitae are exempt from many imperial laws, and even the Imperial Inquisition tends to exercise caution when dealing with individual navigators due to their political power. However, this does not negate the fact that all agents of the Golden Throne keep a close watch on any representatives of the navigator houses, because one of the fundamental contradictions existing between the Navis Nobilitae and the rest of the Imperium is the fact that navigators are mutants. In the culture of the Imperium, mutants are not often allowed to live except as a cruelly oppressed lower class, as their common practices are hunted down and eliminated everywhere. As a result, the influential and mysterious navigators are avoided and feared. The preservation of the recessive navigator gene through selective breeding means that over thousands of years, most navigator families have acquired developmental deformities, strange ailments, or psychological deviations. It is likely that the navigator gene itself causes genetic instability and mutations as a navigator grows in power and ages. The great houses of the Navis Nobilitae are among the wealthiest and most politically influential noble assemblies in the Imperium. There are thousands of navigator houses, yet all navigators collectively are but a drop in the ocean compared to the countless masses of humanity. All these houses are not equal in strength or composition. Throughout the history of the Imperium, many have branched off from the original great families. Some have dwindled and gone extinct over the years, Some have been outlawed, while those that thrived led a luxurious lifestyle and established branch houses in economic and strategic positions within imperial space. All navigator houses can be divided into 4 groups spread throughout the galaxy. Arbitrator houses are a dynasty of navigators most closely associated with one of the original navigator families dating back to the times of the Unification Wars. They are among the wealthiest and most traditional among the navis nobilitae and have large estates in the navigator's quarter on Terra. Their influence extends to the very borders of the Astronomican's light. Arbitrator houses preserve traditions and customs that have served them for millennia. Nomadic houses have renounced any terrestrial attachments, including their rich estates in the navigator's quarter. Instead, they have fully surrendered themselves to the power of wandering among the stars and the void. Their lineages are preserved on vast fleets that are constantly on the move. Due to their lifestyle, members of the nomadic houses are perhaps the most experienced of the navigators in the Imperium. Enshrouded houses, they suffered significant losses or disgrace within the domains of the Imperium, leading them to relocate their base entirely to the edge of known space, where they cling to the remnants of their former status and power. Although these navigators may be experienced and wise, something in the past shattered their home and reduced them to such a distance from their once exalted position that other, more fortunate, sometimes cruelly refer to them as beggar houses. The renegade houses represent a great house that has completely abandoned the traditions and ancient customs of the navigator families. In their quest for power, they may even be cast out by other members of the navis nobilitae, actively engaging in genetic modification of their children to improve their fate, which led to the birth of horrific monstrosities and active interference from the Inquisition. However, in some successful cases, their actions gave rise to new strains of the navigator gene. Rogue traders, initially called military merchants during the era of the Great Crusade, and bearing the ancient title of Lord Captain bestowed upon them by the Emperor himself, are unique and powerful human individuals. Operating on the fringes of Adeptus Terra's influence, they serve as freelance explorers and interstellar merchants of the Imperium. In their task of exploring and exploiting regions of the galaxy still unknown to humanity, rogue traders may encounter various fascinating worlds and cosmic anomalies. For example, planets inhabited by long-forgotten human civilizations may be discovered. These regions, once noted, are officially incorporated into the Imperium by the adept explorers of Adeptus Mechanicus and expeditions of the Navis Imperialis. The most valuable possession of a rogue trader is the Imperial Warrant of Trade, an ancient document outlining and sanctioning the accepted terms of a rogue trader's activities and those of their descendants throughout the galaxy under Imperial law. These charters are inherited, immediately creating an entire dynasty upon issuance. Dynasties are granted a personal heraldry, identifying members among the imperial nobility. Rogue traders are endowed with powers by the highest lords of Terra, and their status is comparable to planetary governors. They have the right to travel freely throughout the Imperium and beyond. This enables them to legally interact with cultures typically forbidden to imperial citizens, for instance, non-imperial human worlds and Xenos-controlled planets. Moreover, rogue traders are granted the permission and freedom to deal with these cultures as they see fit, in ways that serve the interests of the Imperium. Rogue traders, as individuals who traverse among alien stars and interact with a myriad of cultures, are deemed susceptible to heresy, from unruly philosophies to Xenos contamination and warp entity possession. All these factors may lead to fierce confrontation, especially if a rogue trader possesses a building or artifact coveted by others in the Imperium with equal or greater power. Naturally, all of this draws the keen eye of the Inquisition. It is not uncommon for captains who have tainted themselves with dubious actions to stand before an Inquisitor's judgment if, of course, he manages to capture them first. The Departamento Munitorum, also known as the Adeptus Munitorum, is a division of the Adeptus Administratum responsible for the provisioning of the Astra Militarum. Munitorum is tasked with the formation and training of new regiments of the Imperial Guard, equipping and supplying all active regiments, as well as the transportation of troops to the theatre of war with the aid of the Imperial Navy. It is important to remember that this is primarily a logistical organisation akin to the larger administratum, of which it is part. While the administratum deals with civil governance throughout the Imperium, the Munitorum is exclusively concerned with the military logistics necessary for victory in the Emperor's glory. The Departamento Munitorum is organized to allow each appropriate level of the Adeptus Terra to effectively respond to the numerous threats faced by the people of the Imperium, regardless of their location in the galaxy. Local branches of the department can levy a tithe from worlds close to the combat zone without needing guidance from higher levels of Munitorum bureaucracy. As the threat level increases and more local Munitorum departments become involved, the sum of the tithes and the number of planets contributing to them also increases. It is at this stage that higher echelons of the Departamento Munitorum become engaged, capable of redirecting additional resources from other parts of the Imperium to the given war zone. Local adepts of the Departamento Munitorum in the Imperial subsector are legally entitled to levy a tithe immediately without prior warning if necessary. For this reason, true centralized logistics management of the Astra Militarum from Terra is neither required nor advantageous due to the functional autonomy of each level of the organization. The Departamento Munitorum does not handle the logistics of the Adeptus Astartes or the military orders of the Adeptus Sororitas, as each Space Marine chapter is a fully autonomous military organization, and the provisioning of the Sisters of Battle rests on the shoulders of the Ecclesiarchy. Due to its importance, the Departamento Munitorum is represented by 3 members among the High Lords of Terra: the Lord Commander Militant of the Astra Militarum, the Chancellor of the Estate Imperium, and the Master of the Administratum. The Departamento Munitorum comprises 4 Officii Majores, each subordinate to one of the 3 aforementioned Lords of Terra. The Officio Tactica, subordinate to the Lord Commander Militant, seeks to determine the logistical needs required for every active Imperial war zone. The Imperial Treasury Office, under the Chancellor of the Estate Imperium, aims to account for all material resources received by the Munitorum as tithes, as well as all resources expended by the department to meet the demands set forth by the Officii Tactica. Bureaucrats in this office essentially serve as the treasurers of the Imperial Armed Forces. The Department of Records, subordinate to the Master of the Administratum, is responsible for the creation and maintenance of all Munitorum records. The Schola Progenium is coordinated and managed under the aegis of the Adeptus Ministorum, though the fate of their wards is determined by the Munitorum once they reach maturity. The Schola Progenium bears primary responsibility for the upbringing and training of orphans, predominantly the offspring of officers of the Astra Militarum of the Imperial Navy who have fallen in service to the Imperium. Many subsequently become commissars, high-ranking Imperial officers, members of the Adeptus Sororitas, or even servants of the Inquisition, and yet more mysterious assassins. Below the senior officers lie numerous officii minoris, tasked with overseeing various aspects of the logistics and readiness of the Imperial Armed Forces. Many of these offices coordinate their activities with the Adeptus Mechanicus, the Administratum Assay Corps, a division of the Munitorum responsible for ensuring the efficiency and incorruptibility of the Munitorum's bureaucracy, where it interacts with the larger Administratum's bureaucracy. They represent the bureaucracy that other bureaucrats must contend with to accomplish their work. The Officio Prefectus, also known as the Commissariat, is responsible for the recruitment, training and oversight of the activities of the Commissar Corps and the Scions of Tempestus. The role of the Commissar is to fight alongside the regular officers of the regiment and take command when morale falters or soldiers do not fight with sufficient zeal. In such situations, a commissar may take on the command of a regular officer and execute any person attempting to flee. The Tempestus Scions, on the other hand, is one of the most rigorously organized of all imperial organizations, as its troops form the elite corps of stormtroopers serving as a special operations division. Though the Tempestus Scions is technically a subgroup managed by the Adeptus Administratum, it enjoys far greater autonomy than the regiments of the Imperial Guard fighting alongside it. The Departmental Protection Corps ensures compliance with all regulations of the Munitorum and the Imperium concerning department personnel. Their primary concern is the prevention of corruption by the bureaucrats of the Munitorum. The Munitorum Siege Auxiliaris Corps assists the Imperial Armed Forces with storage and transport, construction and maintenance of equipment necessary for prolonged planetary and city sieges. The Munitorum's Engineering Corps works in close collaboration with the Mechanicus and is responsible for all military engineering projects not conducted under enemy fire on the front line. The Labour Corps, working in concert with the Mechanicus and Engineering Corps, is engaged in the construction of bases, airfields, research centres, orbital docks, base stations, and any other facilities required by the Imperial Armed Forces. The personnel of the Corps is primarily composed of hired labourers, convicts, and interdictors. The Pioneer Corps, a subdivision of the Munitorum, explores and prepares planets for use as new Imperial military bases, paving the way for the arrival of the Engineering and Labour Corps. The Estate Imperium, also known as a subdivision of the Adeptus Administratum, is described as the chancellery of the Administratum, numbering 1 million individuals. Its primary function is the storage of archival records for all the Adeptus, providing them as needed. Its secondary function is the oversight of the management of the Imperial Treasury within the Adeptus Munitorum. The head of the department holds the title of Chancellor. The department's significance is such that its leader sometimes occupies one of the rotating seats in the Senatorum Imperialis among the High Lords of Terra. The reason for this level of influence is quite trivial for bureaucratic structures. Due to their position, the Chancellor has the authority to ensure that certain data is either published at the right time or kept hidden from prying eyes. Moreover, the position of the Chancellor of the Estate Imperium is one of the oldest in the Imperium. It was listed among the first 4 temporal magistrates, which eventually evolved into the Senatorum Imperialis. The Imperial Command divides the planetary governors and sector lords. The political leader of any world of the Imperium is referred to as a planetary governor or imperial governor. Regardless of their specific title, a planetary governor is the individual with the power to rule a world or even an entire star system on behalf of the Emperor of mankind. A planetary ruler of a particularly important world may in some cases also perform the functions of managing a subsector, sector, or even a segmentum. The etiquettes of high society dictate that such figures are formally addressed as Lord or Lord Governor, with the addition of the sector or subsector they govern. For example, Lord Calixis. Most sector lords combine their duties with that of the planetary governor of their sector's capital, or the most important subordinate world. Their responsibilities are similar to those of a planetary governor, but encompass several star systems or multiple subsectors. The lords of the sector themselves hail from various strata of society, including the imperial nobility or even high-ranking prelates of the ecclesiarchy, such as a cardinal. Therefore, the planetary governor is granted discretionary political control, including governance, defense, and economic development of the entrusted planet. Theoretically, the imperial commander is bound by obligations to the Adeptus Terra, yet in practice, the governor may rule with minimal interference from other bodies of the Imperium. As long as the imperial tithe is paid, the mutant and psychopopulation remains under control, and the governance of the planet is conducted competently. The governor is free to govern the planet as he sees fit. It is expected that imperial planetary governors will defend their planet on behalf of the Imperium by maintaining the necessary forces of planetary orbital defense. Due to the capriciousness of the warp, astropathic communication with the Adeptus Terra is often delayed or sometimes altogether ceases. This means governors must make decisions to uphold their world without the counsel and assistance of Terra, whereby to ensure the prosperity of the world, a ruler must be an expert in military matters, as well as in the development of trade and the commercial infrastructure of the entire planet. Although governors are endowed with exceptional powers to govern the planet's populace, this does come at a cost. They are sworn vassals to the Imperium and must provide military support to local imperial campaigns. In the early history of the Imperium, this was a straightforward process. A simple obligation to provide a specific number of troops and personally engage in battle if required. Later it was recognized that this was impractical. As with the growth of the Imperium, the required large number of conscripted troops led to inefficient use of planetary populations, whereas on some planets too much labor was dispatched for war, resulting in economic disruption. After analyzing the issue, a practice was developed that persists to this day. The tithe by regiments of the Astra Militarum, the size of the tithe, is determined by the wealth or available resources of the planet. It is expected that as part of its remit, the governor will supply not only troops for the Astra Militarum, often requisitioned from the existing planetary defense forces. The tithe is also a percentage of the entire economic output of the planet in whatever form it is derived. The majority of tithes are regular obligations, while others are levied under certain circumstances. These requirements lead to close relationships between the imperial planetary governors and the clerks of the Departamento Munitorum, responsible for the deployment of forces and supplies throughout the galaxy. In the forge worlds of the Adeptus Mechanicus, the imperial governor is imperial in name only. The tech priests choose from among their high-ranking archmagi the one who will be given the title of Fabricator General, which for the Mechanicus is equivalent to the title of Planetary Governor. The Fabricator General is always primarily devoted to the cult Mechanicus and secondarily to the Imperium, and they are noticeably more independent of the Adeptus Terra than other planetary governors. Their sole obligation to the Imperium is that their world delivers the required tithe in the form of military equipment and other manufactured goods in a timely manner. It should be noted about the special relationships between the Inquisition and the Imperial Command, as the Ordos and the Golden Throne lie outside the structure of the Adeptus Terra. It is considered that they are a step closer to the Emperor. In other words, they are fully entitled to order the planetary governors, although depending on the objective, the Inquisitor might address the Imperial Governor as an equal, adhering to appropriate ceremonies. The vast majority of Imperial commanders do not hesitate to meet the Inquisitor's demands. Yet some governors may feel affronted by the methods of the Holy Ordos, resenting the blunt reminder of the limitations of their own authority in the vast Imperium. It is exactly when the Imperial commander has something to hide that the situation becomes interesting. In such cases, the Inquisitor investigates the governor, and a particularly zealous Inquisitor may even uncover rebellion from seemingly nowhere, subsequently initiating a procedure of power change. The Astra Militarum department of the Adeptus Terra is exclusively occupied with the military craft, and after the devastating Horus heresy, the military machine of the Imperium was fragmented into many interdependent divisions. All levels of the structure were rigidly separated, with trust and flexibility sacrificed for increased loyalty and internal security. Revolts against imperial authority may still be inevitable, but now they are isolated and fragmented, hence easily suppressed. Known in Low Gothic as the Imperial Guard, it is under the joint control of the Chancellor of the Estate Imperium, the Master of the Administratum, and the Lord Commander Militant of the Imperial Guard. In matters of strategy, it is the Lord Commander Militant who is the Supreme Commander of the Imperial Guard, directly aided by 5 Lord Commanders, with one for each of the 5 segments of the Imperium. Because the Lord Commander Militant is largely occupied with guarding the interests of the Astra Militarum Senatus Imperialis, the responsibility for ensuring the effective daily deployment of the Imperial Guard falls on the Lord Commanders of Solar, Pacificus, Tempestus, Obscurus, and Ultima. Thus, directives in military operations are passed vertically from top to bottom, and likewise, only from bottom to top travel the reports of military actions. However, in exceptional cases, there exists in the current Imperium the accursed title of War Master. It is assigned by the High Lord of Terra only when a crusade is planned and resources from multiple Imperial sectors are required. The appointment to such a powerful title is necessary because disputes between services and bureaucratic red tape complicate the assembly and command of forces where this is absolutely unacceptable. In the Imperium, rarely do more than one War Master operate simultaneously due to the extraordinary powers granted to the holder of this rank. It is said that the Emperor himself places the command wreath on the brow of an outstanding leader through the hands of the Lords of Terra. At any other time and places without a War Master, the Imperial Guard is forced to struggle not only against the innumerable enemies of humanity, but also against the vast bureaucratic beast of the Imperium. The Imperial Navy delivers to the battlefield, the Adeptus Munitorum supplies the means for war and replenishes losses, the Adeptus Mechanicus creates the tools for warfare and ensures their functionality, and the Officio Prefectus, subordinate to the Adeptus Administratum, keenly ensures that guardsmen and their commander fight in the right direction. And even the despised psychers of the Astra Telepathica, monopolists of interstellar communication and so forth, with each interacting Adeptus. However, the Astra Militarum has at its disposal units upon which they can rely, having full authority over them. The Militarum Auxilia, military formations of abhumans, recognized as fit for military service. Abhuman is a term used by the Imperium of Man to refer to human subspecies. Formally, they are not considered mutants, since their deviation is stable and does not generate further mutations, yet very few consider them equal to true humans. In the Imperial Guard, they are grouped into separate units, and in civilian life they are generally gravely discriminated against. The Officio Assassinorum is the most secretive department within the Adeptus Administratum of professional assassins to ensure the security of the Imperium. There are several temples, differing from one another in specialization and methods for fulfilling a given task. The assassins of the Imperium are capable of altering the fate of worlds with a single pull of the trigger, for where a demonstrative execution is necessary, a Vindicare Temple sniper will plant a bullet in the target's head from a mind-boggling distance while the wayward is surrounded by his follower. If the treachery of the traitors has spread to an entire organization, an Eversaw assassin, bio-enhanced berserker, will be unleashed, who will annihilate dozens, if not hundreds, of insurgents along with the marked target. In cases where sophistication is required, an operative from the Calidus Temple will be dispatched, a shape-shifting assassin able to approach his victim under the guise of the most trusted friend, and after the enactment of justice, don the guise of a traitor, sowing discord and chaos within the ranks of rebels. And when the target is a psyker, one of the rare and formidable assassins of Culexus will be dispatched to eliminate them, beings with a strange void instead of a soul, making them a curse for all who deal with the warp. There is almost nothing unknown about the location of the temples of the Officio Assassinorum in the Imperial databanks, except that they are all located somewhere on Terra, with the exception of the Eversaw Temple. It does not have a single base. Instead, operatives are kept in cryostasis aboard various secret void ships and space stations scattered throughout Imperial space. Following this is a diversity of the Adeptus Minoris, the junior departments of the Adeptus Administratum, of which there are so many in the vast Imperium that we shall highlight the most notable ones whose deeds have marked the pages of humanity's history. The Templars. Psychologists, little is known about this imperial organization and its designated functions. Presumably, the Templars serve as the main subdivision of military intelligence and psychological warfare of the Imperium of mankind. The organization consists of two known types of units, auger brigades and demolition teams. It is known that the Templar psychologists deployed 37 demolition teams and 6 auger brigades as part of the Imperial forces for the defense of the fortress world of Cadia and its surrounding star systems in the Cadian sector during the 13th Black Crusade. However, all their activities are strictly classified. The Officio Sabotorum, the agents of this particular organization, excel in sabotage and the destruction of property, hard targets, rather than the elimination of specific individuals, soft targets. They are also well versed in the art of terrorism, committing violent and brutal acts aimed at creating fear, deliberately targeting civilian safety or ignoring it. Although during a mission, agents are given a certain freedom of action concerning the death of innocent witnesses and additional collateral damage, direct killing is not the primary objective of Sabotorum agents. This distinguishes them from the adepts of the Officio Assassinorum. As experts in the art of sabotage and destruction, agents of the Officio Sabotorum specialize in the use of explosive ordnance, toxic poisons, and poisonous gases, rather than conventional weapons. If an agent has to strike a target directly, the mission is already considered a failure. Agents of the Officio Sabotorum are utilized in all areas of the Imperium of mankind and were precisely identified during the Third War for Armageddon, which involved 34 Sabotorum agents. An essential feature of the Imperium should be highlighted here. It is so vast that in many corners the horrors of war have not been known for millennia. To keep the population alert, there are many Adeptus Minoris aimed at active propaganda of unity before the horrors of the galaxy. Officio Medicae, a division of the Adeptus Administratum, responsible for public health and other biomedical matters within the Imperium's territory. It oversees state medical institutions such as hospitals, clinics, and biomedical research institutes on many of the most technologically advanced imperial worlds. The Officio Medicae is also the last bastion of public health for humanity, overseeing the quarantine of worlds afflicted by deadly diseases, whether natural or wrought by chaos, which are capable of spreading to neighboring planets through interstellar trade and pilgrimage. Despite its crucial responsibilities, the Officio Medicae is rife with bureaucratic corruption and inefficiency, much like all other divisions of the Administratum. The Departamento Contagio is a branch of the Administratum concerned with the study of infectious diseases. It is under the jurisdiction of the Chief Chirurgeon. The Chief Chirurgeon is the ruling figure of the Order of Hospitallers. During the times of the Great Crusade, the Chief Chirurgeon was a member of the Council of Terra, lamenting the dire state of the citizens of Terra. In current times, the department works closely with the ecclesiarchy, as since its emergence on the political stage of the Imperium, the Order of Hospitallers has come under its complete influence. The Officio Agriculturo is a subdivision tasked with overseeing the methods of production and ensuring a high standard of agricultural output in the agri-worlds of the Imperium. Representations of this department are situated on all the most important agri-worlds across the galaxy. They ensure that the rulers and populace of these worlds impeccably adhere to their harvest quotas. Without the grueling and critically important work of these adepts, billions of the Emperor's subjects would simply starve on most planets, as their survival is entirely reliant on the food imported from agricultural worlds. The Logis Strategos is a subdivision of the Adeptus Administratum that performs data analysis and Imperial intelligence services. Its aim is to first analyze the various threats faced by the Imperium from Xenos and the forces of chaos, and then to develop an appropriate counter-threat strategy, using the resources available within the holdings of the Imperium. For example, The adepts of the Logis Strategos may track the movements of orcs in a particular sector, employing previous experience and incoming data, as they attempt to predict when a war boss with enough power to unleash a new Warg will emerge among the greenskins of the observed region. Astrocartographica is the department dedicated to mapping the galaxy, maintaining a very close cooperation with rogue traders who, for considerable compensation, explore the reaches both within the Imperium and beyond. The Departamento Colonis is the organization engaged in establishing new imperial colonies on uninhabited worlds, as well as dispatching armed forces for the protection of colonists. If contact with such worlds is lost, the Colonies Department will send a request to the military organizations of the Imperium to check the status of the colonies. The Departamento Exacta is a division of the Adeptus Administratum tasked with collecting the Exacta, the second most important imperial tithe after the Departamento Munitorum. It determines what civilian and strategic resources a world can possess and how exactly they can benefit the global economy of the Imperium. The Departamento Exacta has a well-deserved reputation as a ruthless organization. It possesses the authority to order a punitive invasion of a world if its expected Exacta compliance criteria do not meet the precise data specifications.